Okay, so quadratic equations, they look like parabolas. So if you don't remember what a parabola is, it looks like this. It looks like a bowl which is either pointing up or down. This point on both of them, which is at the top or the bottom, this is called the vertex. Okay. And notice that if the parabola is pointing down, the vertex is at the top. That's called the max. And why is it called the max? Because it's the largest, right? It's the highest. Similarly, if the parabola is pointing up, the vertex is at the bottom. So that's going to be called the min. Now, all your quadratics look like ax squared plus bx plus c, right? However, all of these equations can be converted into a form of x minus h squared plus k. And what this does is it represents the h and the k value, which will give you the vertex. So this is hk, the point hk. Now to get to that point, what we need to do is we need to complete the square on this general standard form. So anytime you see a problem and you want to graph it, you're going to write it using the completed the square, and which is called the vertex form, and then find the h to the k, which gives you the vertex. Determine if it's a max or a min, and you can do that by looking at the a value, and what it does, it'll tell you if it's pointing up or down. Sorry, there's not actually a here. And that'll tell you whether or not it points up or down. So a being positive means it points up, because it's positive, and a pointing down means it's negative, or the other way. So let's look at this problem, and don't forget, whenever you're completing the square, you need to factor out that a value. So here, we take out the negative, and remember, we only need to do it to the first two, or the parts with the variables in it. We don't care about the constant. Completing the square tells us to take this number, which is attached to the x, divide it by 2, square it. If you add it, you must also subtract it. The first 3 give you x minus, so bring down the signs, 1 squared. The negative comes down as well. And then we have to do the distribution of the minus sign over here, which is going to be plus 1, and then bring this one down as plus 1. So this will simplify as negative x minus 1 squared plus 2. So there are a couple of things that we want to find when we're going through these, because we're trying to graph them. So first, points up or down. So if you look at this, the a value is negative, so it points down. So it points down, a equals negative 1, which is less than 0. 2, what is the vertex? So the vertex is at hk, so I'll write it underneath here again. This is h, that's k. So our vertex is at the point 1, 2. Now, if it points down, is the vertex a max or a min? Right? It points down like this. The vertex is there, so this is a max at 1, 2. Next, we need to find all the intercepts. So the vertical intercept and the horizontal intercept. So remember, the horizontal intercept and the vertical intercept, the word intercept tells you where does it intersect. So where does it touch the vertical axis? Where does it touch the horizontal axis? So on a graph, this is the horizontal axis. The height of y is always 0. So we know that this is always going to look like that. Similarly with the vertical intercept, right? The vertical intercept is going up and down, so there is no x value, which means it's always going to be 0, comma something. Now, the horizontal axis or intercept has 3 possible options. Either it doesn't touch it, it touches it once, or it touches it twice. And we'll see those different examples throughout. But let's go ahead and try to solve these. So the vertical intercept being 0, starting at x equals 0, can we see that it is going to be really easy to do using this equation? So there, if I plug in 0, all of this stuff disappears. So the intercept is going to be just 1. So this is going to be 0, comma 1. The horizontal intercept is easier done in the completed square version form. So what you're going to do is you're going to say 0 is equal to negative x minus 1 squared plus 2. So solve this using the square root property by subtracting 2 to both sides. So you get negative x minus 1 squared is equal to negative 2. Divide by negative 1. So x minus 1 squared is equal to 2. When you do the square root property, you take the plus or minus on the right, and then add 1. So in this case, we have 2 different x values, which means there are 2 horizontal intercepts. So let's go ahead and write those. 1 plus root 2, and then 1 minus root 2. Okay. So the square root of 2 is asking you what number times itself gives you 2. If you have a calculator, just use a calculator to find what that number is. It's about 1.3 or so. So let's go ahead and graph those. So we need the point 0, comma 1, just right there. We also need the point about 2.3, so it's somewhere over here. And this one is going to be about negative 0.3. So about there. And then the max is going to be at 1, comma 2. Without even drawing anything else, can we see the shape of the parabola? So one thing to be careful when you're drawing your parabolas, okay, they have to be smooth and they cannot have points. Okay? One of the biggest mistakes is people would draw their parabolas like this because they're inexperienced with drawing the curve. Okay? So be very careful when you're drawing it. Make sure that it starts and it's smooth and then it has this little bump at the top.